Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Village Board meeting of April 12th. Please join us in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Mrs. Thomas.
Trustee Purcell. Here. Trustee Ballou. Here. Trustee Washington. Here. Trustee Harris-Jones.
Here.
Trustee Heiferman. Here. Trustee Roman. Here. President Hofeld.
Here. Representing staff this evening, to my left is our village manager, Napoleon Haney. To my right, our village attorney, Chris Cummings. To the audience's right, our police chief, Denise McGrath, fire chief, Bob Grabowski, finance director, Dennis Bubanek, marketing director, Jennifer Quirk, economic and community development director, Angela Maceras, public works director, John Schaefer, and assistant village manager, Justine Bruno. The minutes of March 22nd. Any additions or corrections? Trustee Purcell.
Nothing.
Trustee Ballou.
Nothing.
Trustee Washington.
Nothing.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Nothing for me.
Trustee Heiferman.
I have nothing.
Trustee Roman.
Nothing.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Trustee Purcell, seconded by Trustee Washington. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Ballou.
Aye.
Trustee Washington.
Aye.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The claims list in the amount of $1,158,498.19. Trustee Purcell.
Nothing in there.
Trustee Ballou. Trustee Washington.
Nothing.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Nothing.
Trustee Heiferman.
Questions were answered.
Trustee Roman.
No question.
May I have a motion to approve the claims list, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Trustee Washington, seconded by Trustee
Harris.
Harris-Jones. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Ballou.
Aye.
Trustee Washington.
Aye.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
It should be noted that 3 items comprise the bulk of this claims list. Our payment to Burns McDonald, our engineering company, for our new water source was $122,000. 1 month's health insurance for village employees, $261,000. And Washington Park Plaza sales tax sharing was $256,000. That amounted to $639,000, or 55% of that claims list. Hear from the audience. If anyone in the audience would like to address the board on any subject not on the agenda, please raise your hand. If not, the consented,
I have two
Comments?
messages that came in.
please go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Amanda Weisenberger, and my family and I have been Homewood residents for 5 years. My husband and I moved in June 2021 from one house in Homewood to another to make room for our 3rd child. We now live in a position where we can see Harwood Avenue from our backyard. Within the last week, we have been woken up to 2 car crashes, at least one being fatal. Both of these crashes happened near the skate park. One hit a tree and the other hit a guardrail. It seems that this is a dangerous part of Harwood Avenue since these accidents keep occurring. I'm concerned that one day a car traveling the opposite direction might hit a house. Is there any way that we can put up a speed limit sign that blinks at night to remind people to 1, slow down, and 2, that there's a curve in the road? I know there is a blinking sign by Millennium Park to let people know it's a school zone, but I feel we need one to remind people driving at night about the dangers of driving too fast and not paying attention to the road curving. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to, the second letter is, I would like to express my concern with speeding and cars passing on Harwood Avenue. A couple of times I have been driving southbound on Harwood, going the speed limit of 25, and cars have illegally passed me in the left in the no passing section. This is a dangerous street to pass on because of the curve and proximity to the school and park. In addition, I would like to request putting in speed bumps, slow down signs, visually impaired child at play, or some other speed deterrent on Gottschalk between Ridge and 183rd. My son is visually impaired. People often use Gottschalk to circumvent Dixie Highway in this stretch of road. Jennifer Farley.
Thank you. Yes, sir?
Yeah, it's my first meeting. I've been a homeless resident about 3.5 years now. And
Could you come on up so they can, the acoustics are better this way. That's all right, you'll do fine.
99% of the time.
Don't worry about it.
I'm a retired Chicago police officer, and I've been very pleased with what I see out here in Homewood. And if there's anything I can do to contribute, let me know. My name is Murray. I live 3010 Matthew Lane. So I've been very pleased with what I've seen so far.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments. The police chief especially appreciates them.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. Mr. Schaefer, with regard to Ms. Weisberg's comments, with regard to possibly a lighted sign, could something like that be done?
We can definitely look into it.
Okay. We have your information. Do we have her response?
Yes.
If you give that to Mr. Schaefer so we can keep in touch with you. Surely. Any other comments?
Last night, I really like where you guys handled the disturbance a couple of years ago. The corner, block off everything on Homestead. Very great.
Thank you. The omnibus vote, Mrs. Thomas.
The board is asked to pass ordinance M 2215, granting a variance for a lot at 2044 183rd Street, subject to approval of a grading and drainage plan approved by the village engineer. The vacant lot size of 50 foot wide was set in 1923 and is not standard to today's lot size of 60 feet wide. The board is asked to approve resolution R 3104, a technical assistance agreement with the Regional Transportation Authority as part of the village's transit-oriented development process for downtown and areas around the Metra and Amtrak stations. The village received a grant from the RTA for technical assistance with its planning efforts, including a planning consultant. The board is asked to authorize the issuance of a serial raffle license for a Queen of Hearts raffle to benefit Glenwood Academy with a 1-year maximum and waiving the capped or maximum prize value of $5,000 or allow an increase up to $2 million. The board is asked to pass ordinance M 2216 for a special use variance for a parking garage at 17400 Halsted Street for Wing Creek LLC for the Wing Creek Casino being planned for adjacent property in East Hazelcrest. Because this is a parking deck, it requires the board to grant a special use permit. The board is asked to pass resolution R 3105 in support of a Cook County Class 8 incentive for Purpose Illinois 1 LLC doing business as Chick-fil-A at 17450 Halsted Street. The board is asked to amend the budget in the amount not to exceed $33,000 for emergency repair of a sanitary sewer. The board is asked to waive competitive bidding due to the emergency repair and authorize payment to Sunset Sewer and Water, Inc. of Frankfurt to repair a collapsed sanitary sewer line in a rear yard on Perth Avenue. The board is asked to approve resolutions R 3106, 3107, 3108, and 3109 in support of Class 8 tax incentives for developments at 17715, 17729, 17805, and 17825 Halsted Street, and enter into a redevelopment agreement with DIKA Homewood LLC, owner of the 4 properties, for a rebate of sales tax revenues generated by the new Burlington store over a 4-year period, estimated to be approximately $200,000.
Comments or questions from anyone in the audience? Susie, come on up.
Good evening. My name's Susie Dritz. I live at 2060 183rd Street. I live 2 doors down from the vacant lot that is being considered for building. And we have had we moved into the Homewood in 1989. And when we first moved in, we noticed that there was a little flooding when there would be really horrible rain at the edge of our garage. Over the years, the flooding has been getting substantially worse. I have some pictures that the board wants to see. And at this point, I'm just nervous that if it isn't remediated, that I'll have even more water in my yard. And already it looks like a swimming pool when there's bad rain. And we can't even walk from our house to the garage because there's so much water there. We have to cut through the neighbor's yard and go all the way around to the alley to get to our car. Sometimes we can't let our dogs out because the whole yard is underwater. So I'm just hoping that you will take that into consideration when you make your decision.
Mr. Schaefer? Village engineering falls under public works.
Yeah, regarding this, before any building permit is issued for the building, the village will make sure the builder provides the drainage, and he has to tie into the storm sewer, and provides some type of detention if possible on the property to prevent any flooding or water coming off of his property onto somebody else's.
That was it. I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure that you took that into consideration. It's pretty bad, and every year it gets worse.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, with regard to the consent agenda, Trustee
I
Purcell.
just have one question for Mr. Schaefer on that. Could it potentially help for property by having something else put there, that would be tied into, drainage system, or because they would have to provide some kind of runoff or something, right? So could it potentially be good for them?
It could potentially, depends on, I can't necessarily make the builder put in detention that's gonna take in the whole entire, area there. I have to make sure that whatever is on his property, that it doesn't impact any of the other residents. Now, with some of those improvements that he may have to do, it may also, in turn, help those residents on the side properties of that lot.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Trustee Blue. Trustee Washington.
Nothing.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Nothing for me.
Trustee Heiferman.
Regarding the item A that we're speaking about, I've taken particular interest in it, and have spoken with the village engineer just so that I'm comfortable in supporting this tonight, because I think that the property, makes sense to have a house on that property, but I really wanted the assurance, there's no guarantees, but I wanted the assurance that we're doing everything we possibly can to see that the developer does it the right way and does it to benefit the situation. And I'm confident that they will. So then I therefore could support this. Another item on the agenda, item E, which is the Class 8 incentive for 17450, the Chick-fil-A building. I'm not comfortable in supporting that, and I'll ask that that be put on a separate, as a separate item. One of the things that, a bit of a typo, it says the annual sales tax is for 2022 is 6 million. I think it's perhaps the revenue for the store is $6 million. If they're paying their full property taxes as they're presented, it's about 3% of their revenue. I think any business would be thrilled to have a property tax, even in Southern Cook County, that is 3% of their revenue as a basic guideline for what's appropriate. So therefore, I can't support it. I can't, if Chick-fil-A wanted to come in here and do a presentation about the hardship of being on their property, I'd love to listen to it, but I absolutely would ask that we don't support it.
Trustee Roman.
I don't have anything to add.
With that, may I have a motion to approve all items except item E, which will be voted on separately? Been moved by Trustee Purcell,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Roman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Baloo. Trustee Washington.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones. Trustee Hyperman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
Those items are approved. With regard to item E, which is going to be voted on separately, I categorically disagree with trustee Heiferman. I feel in the south suburbs, Class 8 is the equalizer, and this is something that should have been done at the time that this was first brought into the village, and it should be done now. With that, may I have a motion to approve item E, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been approved, motion by trustee Purcell, seconded by trustee Harris Jones. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Baloo. Trustee Washington.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones. Trustee Hyperman.
No.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
Motion is approved. New business. What we've been waiting for, Mr. Bubenit's presentation for the 2022-2023 budget.
Thank you, Rich. We did something a little bit different this year. We've got a 2-page memo in front of you that talks about why is the budget important and what makes a good budget. We'll go through that first, and we have a 5-page memo on why we believe the Village of Homewood's 2022-2023 budget is a good budget. So I've said it 21 years now, we'll start out the budget 22 years running. The most important planning document we prepare each year is the budget. It sets for us a roadmap of what we plan to accomplish the coming year for those services provided by local government. There'll always be a greater demand for local government services than we have revenues to pay for those services. But through the budget discussions, we will balance the services that we can provide with the revenues that we have to pay for those services. So the process is we'll start on the revenue side. The finance department is busy each day tracking revenues, and we also had decades of history on hand to develop trend analysis. So whether the data we're using for the budget is immediate or historical, we will put together a revenue picture that accurately reflects what we have available. On the expense side, then, we asked the departments to prepare an expense budget with the same people and same programs as previous years. So we want to make sure that we can afford what we have right now going forward, and then any new people or new programs would be submitted separately, and we go through that at the end to see if any of those things we can afford. Fund balance is the final piece of the puzzle, and we have a policy that keeps 4 months of fund balance on hand. It's kind of misunderstood, but fund balance for a non-home rule community like us is used to stabilize the services that we can provide when the economy slows, like during a recession. So our revenues will go down, and we'll utilize our fund balance to keep service levels constant. So that's how we've been using fund balance, and we have projected an addition of 76,000 fund balance with this coming budget. So a bunch of meetings that we do that keeps you from going line by line, because that's what we're going to be doing as staff. We'll be going through the department's budgets line by line, look at historical spending on each of those lines. The department will make a recommendation. The finance department members may provide alternatives. The village manager's office will make a final recommendation, and the finance department then will final step will be to put together the budget worksheets, which you have in draft form tonight. The end goal of these meetings is to have a final budget where expenditures are in line with revenues. That is the case for fiscal year budget 22-23. An outcome, a balanced budget where the total revenues anticipated to be available the coming year is sufficient to cover the expense requests of the projects we want to complete the coming year. So I guess a perfect budget, revenues come in 1% over our projection, expenses 1% below, and when we add 2% to fund balance. That would be our definition of a perfect budget. Now we'll go into why we think the Village of Homewood budget for the coming year meets the definition of an important budget and a good budget. And on the screen will be kind of what I'm referencing here. You got it in your packets as well. So what do? We, general fund is dominated by the services of public works, police, and fire, about 79% of our budget. So in general, you could say we plow streets, we investigate crime, and we put out garage fires. That's kind of what we do in local government. How do we pay for those services? Our number one revenue source for day-to-day operations is sales tax. And sales tax surprisingly did do well during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that was kind of because our vendor mix, for example, home improvement grocery stores, those are quite busy even during a pandemic like that. Those communities with malls and specialty stores certainly did not do very well during the pandemic. So sales tax, we are projecting $5.7 million. We do keep an eye on the future as there is inflation, there's conflicts in Europe, there's high gas prices, so that could all affect what we're talking about a year from now. So we always have to keep that, even though we're talking about 2022, 23 budget here, this next one, we'll be talking about what affects that in a year from now. State actually allowed us some new revenue sources last year, so we estimated them last year. Now we have actuals on hand again. The finance department's looking at this stuff all the time and has put together what kind of actual revenues on cannabis and local gasoline tax, and we budget $835,000. Places for eating tax, we put that in 2014, and that was due to the recession, a very bad one caused by the housing crisis. And that places for eating tax helped us quite a bit. You can only live on fund balance so long. We did do some refunds during the COVID-19 pandemic, and those refunds are done. We've got budget $1,600,000. State shared income tax is an important revenue source to us. Our numbers come from the Illinois Municipal League. It's based on population, $2.6 million this coming year. Again, that could be affected by any future recessions, but for now, $2.6 million. Our fines revenues took about a 50% cut during COVID. We've brought those back to more of a historical level now with 574,000 fees, 750,000 dominated by ambulance fees. The fire chief is working on a new program to get additional collections through the Medicaid system. He's busy working on that, so that should add to that revenue source. We did pick up some commuter parking lots, and we do estimate here, as we don't have any actuals on hand, but that would be the revenue source. So estimated $40,000. Property taxes, you've heard me during the December presentation on the levy say it's more of a pension funding revenue source than a day-to-day source at this point. But it still is an important dollar amount that we budget each year for our day-to-day operations. But it's about 63% pension, now 37% day-to-day. The federal government had a program for all governments across the USA called ARPA, American Rescue Act Plan. The Village of Homewood got $1.2 million in October of last year, and it's supposed to get $1.2 million in October of this year. That's in restricted fund balance for projects that we'll be talking about. Hot topic is the casino. Maybe it's getting a little too hot with some estimates on revenues that we're just not going to see, but we'll deal with that and get people realistic on the revenues. So that'll probably help out in the budgets in about 2025, 2026. But it is a new revenue source for us. Expenses, again, public safety and public works, about 79% of our budget. Within public safety, public works, and Village Hall, of course, we have salaries and group insurance, our two dominant line items. Salaries are mostly negotiated with the unions. Group insurance comes from claims history with our insurance pool that we've been in since 2005. Manager's office, they do add a planner position this coming budget. Interesting to note that that planner position was laid off in 2010 due to that recession. So this is a return of a position we had about 12, 13, 14 years ago. Information technology is up. We have to do more with less. So one of the ways to do more with less is to be more automated. Those do come with yearly fees though, so that's your increase in information technology. Events move more towards a pre-pandemic level and are up with a sponsorship drive in place to offset the cost of those events, or offset as much as possible. Now the big thing, amazingly, is in the finance department this year. So for 20 years, we've tried to establish a contingency fund. So what's a contingency fund? The contingency fund will help pay for any emergency expenses during the year that we didn't know of at budget time. Difference between contingency and fund balance is used when our revenue streams are affected and go down due to recessions. But this contingency fund that we're able to fund this year is gonna be when we get an expense, an emergency. It's not gonna be like a Christmas party or anything. It's gonna be something like, I don't know, it would be like a stormwater pump that, that fails. It would be maybe legal, some kind of case we get dragged in that we didn't expect. A lot of the insurance type things are where you utilize contingency. So over the years, we had 10,000, we had 50,000, we had 25,000. It just wasn't enough. This year, we have 1% of our budget, or $230,000 that we are going to use. We hope we don't use it, and it goes in the fund balance at the end of the year. But there's things that come up during the year on the emergency side. You did have a draft of a policy in your packet. Again, I talk about equipment failure, unplanned legal overtime costs, sometimes if there's an event that we didn't expect, spikes in fuel and energy, et cetera. And then there's a process here that is thoroughly reviewed, so it truly is an emergency. So we don't have to, like I said, we don't have to use it for things that aren't an emergency. But again, Finance Department finally was able to figure out a budget where we could establish a contingency fund, and that is an example of good local government fiscal management to have that type of account there. Public Works was approved for a position last year. They've looked at it a little differently this year, so that same position they were approved for last year is a little bit less expensive this year. They do have $153,600 in their capital budget for 183rd Street work. That was in the operating budget this past year. Now it's the same amount as in the capital budget. Vehicles are hard to get right now due to a lot of problems with supply. So we have a situation where we have cash on hand and expiring leases. If those vehicles can be found, we will purchase those vehicles with very limited budget effect. Again, mostly because we have leases that are expiring. Leaf pickup has increased from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and we're putting additional dollars into the parking lot that we just took over. Fire department has an inability across the country, not just here in Homewood, to find staffing right now, in particular part-time staffing. So they're applying for a federal government grant to offset the cost of their firefighters. So we won't know what happens with that grant until the summer of 2022, but it is like a across the whole country problem for the departments, and so a fire chief and a deputy have applied for that grant. We have some very old emergency sirens, and we have some expiring vehicle and AED leases that we will use to lease new emergency sirens with, again, minimal budget effect by utilizing those expiring leases. Police department has been busy with enforcement details around town on speeding. They also look to put in some license plate readers and cameras around the town this coming year. The water fund. So that's been a big topic as we move from Chicago Harvey to Hammond Chicago Heights. We financed that without any debt due to a policy from 2005 that was pay as you go versus issuing debt. It's worked out well, but in the coming years now we'll have to start rebuilding that fund for future capital projects. Expenses, again, no notable expense changes in the water fund. We're just really trying to get up and running with Hammond Chicago Heights, and we'll probably have more to report on expenses, but again, we'll try to build up our funds for future capital projects. Motor fuel tax was kind of interesting. The state of they allocated additional dollars through Rebuild Illinois grant funds, but supply and demand with the price of oil and with contractors stretched thin has resulted in those same streets being quite a bit more expensive to repave. So additional dollars we have, but noticeable additional expenses due to things out of our control, price of oil, and just the lack of contractors to do all these jobs. TIF funds misunderstood because they have a 23-year life, so you need to have a long-term focus with TIF and understand that as the equalized assessed value goes up, which it certainly did this past year, that will provide the dollars for 23 years to fund infrastructure projects and incentives in those same TIF areas. As far as expenses in our TIFs, the big project to point to is the Hartford building downtown. It's under construction. And that project, as it gets completed, should help us redevelop other parcels of the downtown. So kind of our catalyst for downtown development, using the TIF tool, which again, we have to remember that it needs 23 years, its full year of life, to generate that increment for these projects. Debt service funds were certainly a low debt community. We issue bonds, non-referendum bonds, about every third year. It's limited to 0.5% of equalized assessed value, or about $2 million. So we have our last bond, September 2020, had an interest rate of 0.85, record low. We'll never get to see that again. But most of our dollars that we're paying back are for principal and very few for interest. But when you borrow once every 3 years, that means your capital improvement plan, every third budget, is kind of not much. And that's this year. So we have no real significance projects to be bonded. A year from now, we'll have much more to talk about because we will have issued about a $2 million general obligation bond. So I just highlight $153,600 towards any improvements on 183rd Street and some village-wide camera replacements. Water and sewer capital projects, well, we're gonna wanna rebuild that fund after spending about $12 million to switch suppliers. So we're in good shape to rebuild that fund, but we did use a lot of money on that project. TIF projects, as far as capital, $100,000 for a parking lot in the Southgate TIF, $200,000 for infrastructure in the new Dixie Miller TIF, and some work on a building on 175th Street that we just did that. Fund balance, it stabilizes our operations when recessions slow our revenue streams. We hope to add to fund balance, but the national economy, inflation, war in Europe, etc., could affect that. But our goal, of course, is always to add to fund balance. We saw how important that was with the housing crisis and even with our COVID budget just a couple of years ago. We had to lean on fund balance. Let the minutes reflect that the revised budget will be on display at Village Hall on the website on April 15th, and that the public hearing for April 26th on our budget will be going to the press April 15th as well. With that, any questions? I probably have to turn your questions over to the departments, unless you have a finance department question.
Thank you for a rather succinct presentation, always enjoyable, Dennis. Any comments or questions from anyone in the audience with regard to budget matters? If not, we'll have board comments. I would just like to say it's a well thought out budget. I'd like to thank each of the department heads for their contribution. You live within your means. We do everything very, very well. I'm particularly impressed with the rainy day fund that you're really replenishing. That will give us the opportunity to meet any emergencies in the future. And one thing that wasn't mentioned is something that the state has said, that we are to get additional monies for LGDF, local government distributive funding. I think we're projected to get about $150,000. It's allocated, but we've not received it yet. So that would increase our surplus by that amount of money.
It is a draft budget, so in 2 weeks it'll be the final budget, and that 150 you talked about will be in that final budget, flowing into an additional fund balance.
Good. Board comments, Trustee Purcell.
I just want to thank you for all the work to put into this each and every time. I know as soon as one ends, the other one begins, so you're always working on it. And as a village, I think that we've done such a wonderful job keeping things straight, keeping ourselves above water, literally. But I don't have any questions about it. I just thank you for the hard work on it.
Trustee Baloo.
Thank you for being simultaneously thorough and concise. And I just think that this speaks to how cohesive of a village that we are.
Trustee Washington.
I agree with everything that's been said. As always, thank you for your diligence.
Trustee Harris Jones.
As always, Dennis, thank you for your hard work. Well thought out draft of a budget. And of course, it will be finalized eventually. So thank you for your hard work again.
Trustee Heiferman.
I always enjoy the document. I really do. I think that the summaries are really good. And, thanks for presenting it well, and thank you, Amy and staff, for really being the backbone on it as well.
Trustee Roman.
I just echo everything. Thank you to everyone for all of your help, and I always enjoy the presentation, Dennis.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Amy Zolkowski, our Assistant Director of Finance, who certainly has a lot of input into this budget. Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. General Board discussion, Mr. Haney, before we begin.
The one thing I wanted to say is I wanted to thank the department heads. Obviously, budget season, it's a lot of give and take. There's a limited resource, but our department heads came together. We sit in the room and we figure it out. So, and we say to each department, you may not have received what you initially thought you would receive, but it's a give and take. So I want to say to the department heads, thank you for sacrificing and well thought out budget. So the other thing I want to mention was 1221 building. I initially shared that the closing for the 1221 building would be May 2nd. But we actually expect the closing of the 1221 building to be in a couple of weeks. So just wanted to share that.
General Board discussion, Trustee Purcell.
Nothing to add.
Trustee Baloo. Trustee Washington.
Nothing.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Nothing for me.
Trustee Heiferman.
Nothing tonight.
Trustee Roman.
Nothing for me.
With that, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second?
And moved by Trustee Purcell, seconded by Trustee Roman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Baloo.
Aye.
Trustee Washington.
Aye.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all.